everyone. We are the Group 7 and we will discuss to you the Chomsky Nativist Theory. Miss Abby?
Thank you, Miss Joycel. So we will talk about Nativist Theory. Concepts of Nativist Theory. Acquisition is innately determined, that we are born with a built-in device of some kind that predisposes us to language acquisition. Children are biologically programmed for language acquisition. So this framework included three parts. The first one is the construction of formally explicit models of linguistic knowledge. Second, the search for the general principles that could limit the space of possible grammars. And the last, the methodological assumption that grammatical knowledge and grammatical usage should be treated as distinct. For Chomsky, he said that every child is born with a biological predisposition to learn language or any language. He came up with the idea of a language organ, which is known as the Language Acquisition Device, or LAD for short. So what is LAD? The LAD is a hypothetical tool hardwired into the brain that helps children rapidly learn and understand language. Chomsky used it to explain just how amazingly children are able to acquire language abilities, as well as accounting for the innate understanding of grammar and syntax all children possess. Keep in mind that the LAD is a theoretical concept. There isn't a section of the brain with language acquisition device printed on it and a big switch to turn on the learn a new knowledge. Rather, the LAD is used to explain what are most likely hundreds or thousands of underlying processes that humans have in their brains that have evolved to make us particularly exceptional at learning and understanding language. For example, no child will say biscuit mommy. Instead, the child will say mommy biscuit. The reason is, thus, when a child starts to put two words together, the child has already mastered the basic rules of syntax. And even when the child makes an erroneous sentence, he applies them correctly. So there are four innate linguistic properties of LAD. The first one is ability to distinguish speech sounds from other sounds in the environment. Ability to organize linguistic events into various classes which can later be refined. Knowledge that only a certain kind of linguistic system is possible and other kinds are not. And the last is ability to engage in constant evaluation of the developing linguistic system. So, how LAD functions? First, children need to access to samples of a natural language to activate the device. Once the LAD is activated, they discover the structure of the language to be learned. And then, they discover it by matching the innate knowledge to the structures of the particular language in the environment. Sentences are formed in the following sequence. First, input. Primary linguistic data that includes a language input obtained firsthand from authentic or original sources. The LAD. General language learning principles. For example, children learn what they hear most. Another example is children learn words for things and events that interest them. Grammatical knowledge, the rules, that involves in students' understanding the role of grammatical features in the construction of meaning in the text they compose and comprehend. And the last is output, which is child speech.
Universal grammar. Languages acquisition data. Universal grammar, a set of innate, principal, and adjustable parameters that are common to all human languages. Focuses on the structural relationship rather than the linear order of the words. Universal grammar is a theoretical concept proposed by Noam Chomsky. Not without criticism or controversy from scholars in the specific community that the human brain contains an innate mental grammar to help human acquire languages. Language is organized that depends on the structural relationship between elements in a sentence. Language usually contains other phrases. Parameters determine the ways in which language can vary. Head parameters species the position at the head in relation to its complements of for different languages. Each phrases have a central element that is called the head. English languages is head first language because head of phrase always appears before it complements. Universal grammars is gaining importance through how to rapid technological advances that make finding in unified theory of languages structures plausible. It is gaining importance because of what decoding universal grammar can contribute to understanding the organic biological nature of cognitive thought. The child language at any stage is systematic in the child constantly forming hypotheses on the basis of the input received and then testing those hypotheses of the speech. As the child's development develops, those hypotheses get continually revised, reshaped, or sometimes abandoned. So there are 6 stages in children's first language acquisition, namely: number 1, pre-talking stage or cooing to 0 to 6 months. Number 2, babbling stage 6 to 8 months. Number 3, holoplastic stage 9 to 18 months. Number 4, the 2-word stage 18 to 24 months. Number 5, telegraphic stage 24 to 30 months. Number 6, later multi-word stage 30 plus months. LAD hypothesis that grammar in the language you are exposed to. If it fits the grammar, then continue the hypothesis, but if it is not, there is a testing of new hypothesis again. Actually, dealing with the first language acquisition, there are only 3 most prominent related hypotheses. There are innatedness or nativism, behaviorism, and cognitivism hypotheses. From those, their hypotheses, the writer regards that the most applicable hypothesis dealing with FLA is innatedness hypothesis.
Generative model. So what is generative model? Generative modeling is the use of artificial intelligence or AI, statistics and probability in application to produce a representational or abstraction of observed phenomena or target variables that can be calculated from observations. Pivot grammar. Pivot grammar is characterized in 2 words utterances, which one word, the pivot words, is typically a function word, such as determiner and preposition. And the other one, the open word, is a content word, such as noun and verb. Pivot grammars, the early grammars of child language and sentence. Parallel distributed processing model. Neurons in brain are said to form a multiple connections. A child's linguistic performance may be the consequence of many level simultaneous neural interconnections and not a serious process of one role being applied. The parallel distribution processing, or should I say the PDP, model of memory is based on the idea that the brain does not function in a series of activities, but rather than perform a range of activities at the same time, parallel to each other. There are 3 contributions of the nativist framework of the understanding of the first language acquisition process. Number 1, freedom from the restriction of the so-called scientific method to explore the unseen, an observation underlying abstract linguistic structures being developed in the child. Number 2, systematic description of the child's linguistic repertoire or inter-rule government, or operating out of the parallel distributed of processing capacity. Number 3, construction of a number of potential properties of universal grammar. Why is it important? Because culture knowledge allows you to think in another language. There are concepts you can express in English, but you could say in any other language with a word-to-word translation. By understanding culture differences while learning a language, you find new ways to express these things. So, this is the summary of Chomsky's Nativist Theory. Children are born with a specific innate ability to discover for themselves the underlying rules of a language system and the basis of the samples of a natural language they are exposed to. Language acquisition is something that happens to a child placed in certain environment of something the child does. Children acquisition of grammatical rules is guided by principles of an initiate universal grammar or UG, which could apply to all language. That's all for today, sir, and thank you for listening.
We hope that you learned about Chomsky's Nativist Theory.
Have a good day and keep safe.